Hello and welcome to Instant Transmission, a podcast where we discuss everything Dragon Ball and my journey to becoming an elite internet warrior. Tonight, we're jumping into another Dragon Ball Z movie review as we give our thoughts and opinions of the Dragon Ball Z, The World's Strongest. Pound that protein and stretch those glutes because we're about to go blow to blow with the best of the best. I'm your host, Dayton, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Todd.
Hi.
Tonight's discussion is focused on the second Dragon Ball Z movie release, The World's Strongest, which takes place canonically sometime after the Saiyan saga. The original release was in Japan in 1990, but that didn't make its way overseas into an English dub until 8 years later in 1998, which is a cool fact. And with all that covered, was there anything you wanted to add before we got things started, Todd?
I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is we briefly talked about it, that I think that was the Ocean dub originally. And then I think you found, Dayton, that the Funimation dub came out in 2006. And we watched the Funimation dub, but I originally, like 20 plus years ago, watched the Ocean dub. So this was a weird treat for me, I guess.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And when we looked into it, on November 14th, 2006, according to the wiki, Funimation released The World's Strongest alongside Dead Zone and The Tree of Might in a DVD box set entitled First Strike, which kind of makes me want that box set because it's like a weird relic of history now.
I never had that. I'm pretty sure I had these movies on VHS tape, and I'm pretty sure those were the Ocean dubs.
I mean, we used to go to Blockbuster actually as a kid, and we would buy the like movies that were being retired, and we would find stuff like that's where I got the History of Trunks from. It was a retired Blockbuster VHS.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's hilarious.
Either way, we're here to talk about The World's Strongest. So let's jump into it. And it begins with Piccolo for the second time in a row. I want to point this out that the first movie began with Piccolo and the second movie's beginning with Piccolo, just kind of like training.
I love that. Him just like in the middle of nowhere, this time in a winter climate.
Yeah, so it's way different. He's up in these frigid mountains. Also there, we see Oolong and Gohan in, I guess, the same mountains, which, convenient. And they're tracking down someone who's literally just managed to collect all 7 Dragon Balls.
Yeah, this is... I actually really like this movie. There are some really funny and weird details in here, though. Like, Gohan and Oolong, of all people, together looking for the Dragon Balls, kind of harkening back to, like, Goku with Oolong and Bulma and the others looking for the Dragon Balls, and even more so harkening back to that when Gohan kind of questions, like, what are you going to wish for when we get the Dragon Balls, Oolong? And he just is visualizing panties.
Yeah, it's a throwback to the very first wish we ever saw in the Dragon Ball franchise, which was a save the day wish by Oolong that prevented Emperor Pilaf from wishing for, well, I believe it was immortality was what he was looking for, or was it to be taller? I can't remember. All the wishes seem ridiculous.
I think Pilaf wanted to rule the world, if I remember right, but it has been a minute, so.
But yeah, we flip over to this weird looking greenish, grayish old man who has collected all 7 of these Dragon Balls, and he summons the Eternal Dragon before our heroes can stop him. This person asks that his mentor, Dr. Wheelo, be freed from the frozen ice in the mountains so that way he can rule over this planet, as is his right.
This is hilarious. I also want to point out that because I haven't watched the actual movie in over 20 years, but I have watched the Team 4-star rendition probably dozens of times over the past couple of decades. My memory and my interpretation of this movie is vastly different.
Oh, I actually haven't seen the Team 4-star version of this. I didn't watch the Team 4-star version of most movies that I hadn't seen yet.
That's probably a good idea. Maybe we'll watch those and kind of walk through those another time. But it is it's a very different experience.
Well, Shenron grants this old man's wish, and we see the mountains begin to crack and break apart, and then we see them start melting away in this just tide of water. And we see this giant poop looking building appear.
It's an excellent way to describe it. It basically looks like yeah, it's just a poop building with spikes on it. And we kind of get the title drop here.
We do, which was definitely epilepsy inducing. Oh my God.
Like, I thought the exact same thing. Like, it was giving me a headache how much it's like flashing black and white. I was like, oh God.
Like, who thought this was a good idea? This is like really annoying. This is, I mean, as far as title screens go, this is one of the worst I've ever seen. They fail it.
It's really, really bad. I felt exactly the same.
Also, I thought it was interesting that I think in the first movie we watched, they used the same animation for the series opening, and they use a different guitar riff over it, different music over it. They do the same thing in the second movie as well, The World's Strongest. It's the exact same animation opening, but they insert, it's still electric guitar, but it's a little bit more subtle than the Rock the Dragon we're used to. I probably should have looked into whether this was the same music for the Japanese opening or if it was the like something America introduced.
This would be just for America.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think even for the TV specials, I think all of those were like the Chala Head Chala song, and then I think the animation, it would have been different because these were taken directly from, like we were talking about before the podcast, most of them are, the scenes are pulled from the movies themselves, which is kind of funny.
That's hilarious. I mean, and speaking of hilarious, Gohan and Oolong are still hanging out, and we see them staring out over this weird castle poop looking thing. And this is where Oolong decides that he's had enough of this and turns tail to leave. But some weird looking Cyberman thing appears in front of his path. Is this supposed to be a Cyberman?
Man, and I'm gonna continue to make Team 4-Star references because it's gonna mix me up in my brain. I think that they are actually called Biomen, and I don't know if it's supposed to be like a reference to Cybermen or a joke that they look so close to Cybermen. But we'll find out later that they are kind of like bioorganic creatures, I think made by Dr. Cochin.
Okay. We see Gohan attempting to rush to his pig friend's aid when suddenly three more just appear out of the air and begin to circle punching the crap out of Gohan. I actually started laughing out loud because it was so sudden.
I can't. I'm going to continue to make Team 4-Star references, but the Team 4-Star version of this basically takes that sequence and extends it by about 4 times in length.
Like, it's just like there's no reason for it. Like, I'll help you, Oolong, and then suddenly just being murdered by a gang. Like, it's hilarious.
It is really funny, and Team 4-Star just kind of emphasizes how funny and ridiculous it is of this fucking 5-year-old kid just getting his ass beat by these biomen.
Well, thankfully, Gohan has a secret green guardian as Piccolo kind of pops in out of nowhere and grabs one of them by the hand and then very quickly dispatches all of these Cybermen. Like, it's not even a fight. Gohan passes out from being curb stomped for anywhere from 10 to 40 seconds, depending on which version you watch. And then we see Piccolo kind of glance around, kind of sensing, I don't know, different entities around him. And we kind of get shots of what I think are our main villains at this point. There's one that kind of, at least in this scene, we find out later it's not so much, but he kind of looks like a Namekian in this scene, except his antenna are on his chin. Another is this pinkish looking guy with pointy ears and white hair and fangs. And then the final one looks like this orange Dodoria looking mofo from what I can see from their faces. So this is my first look at what I think are the bad guys at this point.
Yeah, to your point about this movie starting with Piccolo just training in the middle of nowhere, this is very similar to the first movie, The Dead Zone, where Piccolo just gets his ass beat by I think three henchmen from Garlic Jr. as well.
I'm looking for. I hope this continues in the third movie. I don't remember which one it is or if I've even seen it, but I'm looking forward to finding out if Piccolo's trend continues.
We'll have to see. I actually don't remember if it does or not.
Well, Piccolo is enveloped in this like red light after sensing these villains. And we see him kind of screaming in pain before we flip over to Gohan and Oolong, who had tumbled down into this icy ravine. And I just have a note here that says, I don't really know what the hell is happening right now.
The transition, this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about briefly because, yeah, Gohan and Oolong just kind of get up. They're like, oh, hey, looks like Mr. Piccolo saved us. Wonder why he just vanished and left us here. It's the weirdest transition. And it's also like, why did these bad guys just leave this pig and this kid here? Why didn't they, I don't know, take them, kill them, whatever? It's just weird.
Yeah, it honestly it blows my mind because they like the most we get is Oolong comments on how Gohan isn't scared of Mr. Piccolo at all. And mind you, at this point, I'm still trying to figure out where in the timeline this is taking place at, which is why I make a note of this because there's no context. But yeah, the two just they just abandon the scene and just leave. Like they go home and whatever happens to Piccolo is like whatever. Like Gohan's not telling anyone because Oolong doesn't want to get in trouble. So he tells Gohan to kind of keep everything shut, keep everything, under the sly. And this is where it transitions into the musical scene of Gohan becoming a great scholar or something like that. The beginning of this is really, really jarring and weird.
It's very strange. I believe only the first two movies, because there was a sequence like this in the Dead Zone movie as well. But I believe only the first two movies have these like kind of childish Gohan sing along sort of sequences, and the rest of the Dragon Ball Z movies do not. I don't know if they were trying to like aim towards a younger audience with these originally, and then they were like, "Oh, this shit ain't working," and dropped it, or what? It's strange.
Well, I think in the Dead Zone, like Gohan had like ate some fruit that made him almost like drunk or something like that. So at least the weird musical scene is him like, like tripping balls or whatever, right? Like there's some context for it. This one comes out of left field, man. I think he falls asleep at his desk and that's why it gets trippy, which is not even a remotely good excuse to go through what the hell we just watched here.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, you're right. At least the first movie does give some narrative reason for why you have this weird sing-song sequence.
But anyway, the song and dance ends, and we flip over to Oolong, who apparently broke the dragon radar. I'm assuming falling down an icy ravine breaks things, so reasonable. And his punishment is that he has to cook dinner for Bulma, and he fails miserably at it. But while all this is happening, important things are happening too. Like the robot Cybermen guys arrive at the front door and ask to speak with Master Roshi, which I think is actually really funny.
I actually really like this. And like I said, I do like this movie quite a bit. So we get Master Roshi kind of like coming down, and these Cyber Biomen are basically like, hey, you're coming with us. And he's like, bitches, I ain't going nowhere. And it just turns into a beatdown from Master Roshi just handing these Cyber Biomen their asses. I love watching Master Roshi be a badass.
I would have liked this scene to have been longer. I would like to have seen Master Roshi actually perform more ass kickery, but it's kind of this really brief, just like we see like a fist landing on a face, like a single block and a counter blow, and then like three of them go flying. Like it's a really, really brief scene. And I'm with you. I love seeing Master Roshi being the master. And I don't know, I'm a little let down here, even though I get that this isn't like, the quality that we're kind of used to with the modern movies. But we know they can make better content than this. And I would have appreciated a little bit more polish on this.
Yeah, I hear you. That's totally a fair critique. Because yeah, it's not much of a fight sequence. I just enjoy getting to see him be a badass. But that kind of results in Dr. Cochin coming in and being like, hey, you're coming with me, or I'm going to hurt the girl. And we see two of the biomen have kind of grabbed Balma, and she's freaking out, rightly so, as they are basically abducting her.
I'm also glad you know his name at this point because I didn't. So he's just weird old man at this point. And yeah, he's bringing Roshi back to his lair, right? And he's using Bulma as a hostage. And Oolong's still at Kame House at this point, right? So he's forced to kind of do the only reasonable thing, which he does do the reasonable thing, and that makes me happy, is that he goes to get Goku. And I like that there's no like beating around the bush. There's no like someone else is gonna go off and play the hero and there's some crazy plan. It's like, no, like the bad guy's here. Let's go get Goku. Let's get right into the main story.
Right. And yeah, I mean, this movie is just shy of an hour long. Like they don't have time to mess around. So he tells Goku basically what happened. Goku's like, okay, well, Master Roshi can kind of hold his own. But it does turn into Goku eventually being like, maybe I should go check on them and see exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny because, Gohan kept his mouth shut. And Oolong was trying to keep his mouth shut, but because of the situation, he was kind of forced to spill the beans. And with Goku kind of activated, kind of being pushed into the limelight where we knew he was going to end up, we show Roshi and Balma kind of in this weird, like, pitch dark area inside Welo's fortress. And at this point, Bulma's plunged down into the darkness and disappears. And then three figures are revealed before Roshi. And these are the three figures that Piccolo had sensed earlier. These are apparently state-of-the-art bio warriors. And Roshi is going to be tested against them.
So this is kind of more what you were hoping for, I think, where this is an extended sequence with Master Roshi actually fighting, I guess, all three of these guys at once. And at the very least, initially holding his own, much to Dr. Kochin's surprise, too. This is a fun fight sequence. There's a few things in here of, like, you get the speed lines and the flashing fists and kicks and stuff, but you actually get to see Master Roshi like dancing around each of these three opponents and delivering a Kamehameha to the big Dodoria looking guy, which ends up kind of stretching like elastic and getting bounced back in his direction. Unfortunately, that is kind of the extent of Master Roshi's showing here, as he then kind of gets his ass beat.
Yeah, he's struck down by this combo attack by all three of the opponents where he's like electrocuted and blasted down. And it's three big, strong robot men versus one old man. And Roshi's eventually defeated by his three opponents. And this is where we see Bulma's kind of watching from like the main bad guy area at this point. And we see her kind of like challenge the villains. And this is where she learns that the old man is Dr. Kochin, so I have a name at this point. And that Dr. Wheelo is also a brain in a jar. We learned that 50 years ago, they were known for conducting inhumane biotech experiments, and after being buried alive in an avalanche in the mountains, they were written off as dead. But they used their tech to survive this whole time. Bulma says Goku will stop them, and Dr. Wheelo vows to basically steal Goku's body.
Yeah. I don't think they start to give away some of the details about what they're trying to do. Like Dr. Wheelo is a big brain in a jar. There are certainly questions about how his brain got that big, but
it's not a regular sized brain. It's a big brain in a jar.
Yeah, those questions will not get answered, at least not in this movie. But he basically wants a powerful body, and this kind of plays into Dr. Kochin's wish at the beginning, where he said he wants Dr. Wheelo to rule the world effectively. So we'll see how that goes for him.
Yeah, this is we now know the bad guys, their intentions, and Goku's on the way. And Goku takes the Nimbus to the evil layer. I want to make sure that this is noted because there's something that happens later where I'm just like, wait, hold on. Also, Gohan steals like a plane or like his mom's flying car or something. I don't know what the hell he's flying, but he's flying in that direction.
So I rewound. Now I sound real old. I went back to kind of watch that part again because I was trying to figure out. I was like, are they showing a 5-year-old kid flying this plane? But the cut, like the scene, is cut such that you can't tell if he's flying it or if somebody else is in the plane with him. Somebody else who we see a little bit later in one of the scenes coming up.
That's really clever. If it sounds like that was intentional, so it sounds like very clever animation.
I think it was intentional because I thought the same thing you did. I was like, is he flying this plane?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Gohan's like, we all know Gohan's kind of a brainiac, so I wouldn't put it past him to be able to fly a plane.
That's fair. That's fair. I think we do see at the beginning of Super, we see young Goten driving a tractor. So who knows?
Goku arrives at the evil lair and is invited in, but all the like bio warriors are apparently activated at this point. So Goku's not able to make his way into the open door because he's met by the first bio warrior, Nico Katsune. Am I saying that right?
The fact that you got their names is impressive to me because I'm pretty sure in the Ocean dub they gave them some goofy names. Like I think one of them is like Shocker, and one of them is like they're something ridiculous. But I think they actually used the Japanese names in here.
I actually, full disclosure, I had to look up their names. I don't know if they use any names for any of the villains in this movie.
I think he does when he introduces them maybe to Goku. He does either they say their names or Kochin says their names one time.
You're right. They do say their names. And I had to look them up because one of them I could not understand like what the name was based off of the pronunciation. I was like, what is he saying?
Yeah, they're very tricky. I honestly prefer the Ocean dub names. I'm gonna see while we're talking if I can find those names because that would be funny to me.
Well, it's funny because I bet you the those ridiculous Ocean dub names are probably closer to Toriyama's intent with the names than just using the Japanese versions, right? Because Toriyama's trying to, rhyme off of like broccoli and underwear and all this other stuff. And if you just use the Japanese name, that doesn't have the same meaning to me because I don't speak Japanese.
That's a good point, actually. But yeah, I'll look in the background and see if I can find.
You got
those.
it. So yeah, the first of these bio warriors in Goku's way is Nico Katsune, and we see Nico launch this flurry of swings as Goku deflects each one of them with a unique animation for each one. I might add, I actually really enjoy this. It's not the most, I guess, martial arts motivated animation, but everyone Goku's turning his body in a specific way to deflect or counter, and I really, really do like that. And Goku follows all this up with this driving his fist deep into the bio monster's belly, which I'd also like to point out. Whenever there's a monster who has like a bunch of just belly that absorbs stuff, Goku will target that with his fists every single time.
It is funny. I mean, it's interesting because usually these creatures they're so tall, right? That their big bulbous gut is basically at like chest height for Goku, which is basically punching height. So it makes sense, but also like I kind of get your point that it's like the audience needs to see Goku punch into this thing's belly.
And it's not like he just punches it and it does that. It's like an event where it's just like Goku punches and there's that pause of just like, I've got a big belly.
I do kind of enjoy that silly trope.
I like this though, because like we get that big belly moment, and then Goku quickly kind of hops into the air before Nico can like launch his own counterattack, and we see him deliver like this like vertical kick to the chin that sends Nico just spinning and spiraling off down into the frozen ground. And this is where we get the very iconic clip from the series intro of Goku somersaulting backwards and then slipping on the ice and sliding on his head.
I really like this visual. I like you said, it's kind of iconic. It's basically in the opening.
It's also very
It's
Goku, right? Like where it's like very talented, but also like I don't know, goofy at the same time.
100%, and that's what makes Goku fun. It's I mean, I keep comparing like the Daima fight scenes that have been coming out in the trailers to Jackie Chan, but this again to me is like Goku is a savant in terms of fighting, but he's also very goofy. That gives me very Jackie Chan vibes.
Yeah, and Goku picks himself up from the frozen ground and then flees into the lair while Nico follows. And uh Goku flees into a room of balls. And not just balls, balls with spikes. And Goku immediately begins just blasting them from the sky because these balls are like spinning and trying to cut him up, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean the world's most dangerous ball pit basically he gets thrown into. Um we start to see there are a few details here that are interesting. So Dayton and I were talking about timeline placement, which trying to figure it out for the movies is basically a lost cause, but Goku does have the Kai symbol on his back. So he's clearly trained with King Kai at this point. So this has to be after he's been wished back and returns presumably after fighting the Saiyan. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, that's well, shoot. He basically shows up and immediately fights the Saiyans, right? Like, there's no because he's
Right.
showing up like at the 11th hour sort of thing. So there's no wiggle room between him getting back and him fighting the Saiyans. He shows up, he fights the Saiyans, and then like after he fights the Saiyans, he's like hospital bound. But before he gets out of the hospital, Krillin and Gohan leave to go to Namek. I have no idea where this movie takes place at.
Yeah, there's no way. Dayton and I talked briefly before the podcast that it's I think a lot of the fan base either considers the movies are just straight non-canon or they're like a separate universe because there's truly no way that this could fit into the timeline.
Yeah, this is one of those rare moments where every second is actually accounted for.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It is also too one of the things that I like about these earliest Dragon Ball Z movies. I think the first 3 in particular feel like they still have kind of like the OG Dragon Ball martial arts feel to them. Like there's lots of interesting choreography, and this movie is kind of like just in the bend of turning towards like people flying, people using lots of ki blasts. Like in this scene where Goku is using normal ki blasts to just blast all these spiked balls. That was up to this point was still very rare.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I'll get to a couple things here in a minute. But during this distraction of shooting all these balls with ki, Nico shows back up and basically gets Goku in with like a couple cheeky blows with his guard kind of down. And then Goku returns a couple blows of his own. And of course, Nico absorbs them and bounces back because he's the big blubber man. But Goku decides to play along in typical Goku fashion. And he decides to hit Nico's belly as hard as he can. And we watch Goku kind of like pushing into Nico, his body kind of stretching and pushing along as Goku pushes against it. And this is where Goku kicks into the Kaioken and punches straight through the monster's body. We see Nico kind of fire off into the air, kind of flying around as the air fires out of him like a balloon losing all of its helium. And we see this deflated version of Nico kind of slowly somber, like to the ground, electrical sparks coming from the hole in his body.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the primary minions down. And the scene basically just immediately cuts to Goku now facing off against one of the other bad guys. This guy, we are going to find out very quickly, is our ice powered minion. And Goku just full on decks him in the schnoz right off the bat.
You know, it's funny. This is the guy who, I believe I had to look his name up. Is it Ebifuria?
That's probably correct.
Because I could not like get a good beat on what they were saying in the dub, so I had to Google it. We have Ebifuria and Kishime are the two combatants that Goku's about to face off against right now.
Right. Uh, and yeah, as soon as Goku basically knocks, that's such a hard name, Ebifuria onto his ass, that's when Kishime kind of like leaps out to attack him, and Kishime seems to be incredibly fast, so much so that he's kind of almost using like the after image technique, and Goku's just like missing him time and time again. And Goku's like, I can't get a bead on this guy's energies too quick. And then these guys pretty much double team Goku, knocking him around and eventually hitting him with their special attacks with the lightning whip from Kishime, shocking Goku, and then I can't say that name. Ebifuria shoots his ice beams at Goku, starting to freeze him into a solid block of ice.
Yeah. I mean, there are some interesting moments in this fight that I like. There's a moment where Goku's knocked down and we see him kind of bounce back up quickly and charge back into the fray. And we see him this time. We see him time Kishi's movements correctly at this point, and we see him kind of after image show up onto the scene with Goku almost like clotheslining him with a punch that takes his feet right out from under him and sends him kind of crashing down into the ground hard. And while this is happening, we see, I'm just gonna call him Ebby. We see Ebby charging up from behind, and Goku like reaches like his back leg out into the side and catches Ebby like on the side of the chin with like this weird back side sweep kick that sends him kind of spiraling and spinning through the air. And there's good movement here. And the sequences, none of the sequences in this movie so far have been very long, but there have been these like little flares of fun moments that I've really enjoyed. When we see Kishi kind of summoning that electrical whip, it's interesting, right? Because we see actually I don't know if they show it here. I'll get to it in a second. Goku's hit by these frozen blasts and he's kind of incapacitated at this point. He's basically getting ready to receive the finishing blow. And that's when new characters arrive on scene as Gohan and Krillin jump in to save the day.
And boy, do they. And by that, I mean, get their asses handed to them within about 20 seconds.
I was so upset about this. I thought this was going to be a cool moment, but oh my God, it was about 3 seconds that we got like our side characters actually looking useful.
Yeah, and I don't even saying they looked useful is probably even an exaggeration. It's man, it was. I was like, I saw this and was just laughing because they make it seem like a moment that Gohan and Krillin are going to save the day, and they just fully get their asses beat in about 20 seconds.
This is where they show how the electrical whip is used, and it's actually kind of gross, and I love it. We see like these little like holes in his arm kind of like open up, and these little biotechnical tentacles come out, and he weaves them into this like long whip that he charges with electricity, and that's what he uses to beat Gohan and Krillin's ass. It's really, really detailed. It's more detailed than I honestly wanted, but it's cool detail.
Yeah, I actually really like that level of detail in it. It is quickly and effectively used to put Krillin and Gohan on the ground, and Goku's basically like, well, guess I got to do this myself, and he Kaiokens out of the ice and then starts delivering an ass whooping of his own.
That Kaioken breaking from the ice, also in the animation for the series intro.
Yeah, I mean it's a cool shot, right? It also happens just as Gohan and Krillin get fully frozen into blocks of ice, and Goku at this point is just he delivers like a punch to Ebifuria, and he is way too fast for Kishime at this point, as he kind of like kicks him in the jaw and then like almost full on two fists Superman like Nappa punches him in the back. Um, that's pretty much it. That's
Yeah,
pretty much
fight's
all
over.
he needs to dispatch these guys.
So yeah, Goku just had to try, and that's all it took. So the fight's now over. Goku frees Gohan and Krillin presumably from their icy prison, and they make their way towards the back of the lair. The three of them meet a wall that they have to fly up. You know, what Goku used the Nimbus for, and Krillin and Gohan used a plane for. They have to fly up it.
This is funny. So I actually thought you were going to mention it's kind of questionable in the ball pit room if Goku is flying or not, I guess, because he kind of hops between the balls. And then there's a moment where he's like, it looks like he's suspended in air and he's shooting ki blasts. So it could be argued that, you know, maybe it's an extended shot of him in the air. But this shot is very obvious. The only thing that I would say is that we kind of saw when we were watching the original Dragon Ball flight, the first flight that we really see is from like Tien and Chaozu, and it's more like levitation. Like it's very slow. It's hard to use. So the only thing I could even say to even remotely justify this is that maybe that's the level of flight that they have at their disposal right now. But I think I'm really trying hard to defend something that makes no sense.
It feels really weird. Also, like, now I have this question. This scene didn't need to be there, but they're like, everyone stop. We need to focus on flying for a second. Okay. She's like, well, why? Why did we stop? You could have just deleted the scene and I would have been okay. You just introduced questions with this scene.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's 100% unnecessary. Especially the fact that, I mean, there's something even more weird to me that Gohan can do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Because, like, at least with, Goku's a savant, and when he sees something, he can do it. Also, Krillin's seen it a few times. And he's even kind of like trained with those guys and stuff like that. So, actually, I think he does use it towards the end of Dragon Ball. When they're doing some of the filler story arcs, and it's like him and Chaozu and Tien running around, I think he does actually use the flight. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just a really weird scene that just made me ask questions. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it really doesn't matter. Actually, none of this matters because I don't think any of this is canon, but I do have to comment on it.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too. They do fly up though. They find Bulma, and she is chained on a platform surrounded by this bug zapper effectively, and Goku finds out the hard way by jumping into it and getting zapped, to which Dr. Kochin appears and says, give me your body.
Yeah, Bulma fills Goku in on all the mad scientist stuff, and Goku basically says, I don't care, I'm just kind of here to kick his butt. This is where we get the reveal of Piccolo, who's been mind controlled by Dr. Wheelo. And we've got ourselves a Piccolo versus Goku fight staring us down as Gohan and Krillin kind of figure out what to do in this situation.
This is, I don't know how to feel about this. This shit happens to Piccolo a lot.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I get that it's cool seeing like the Piccolo Goku showdown because it's so iconic. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm watching a movie to see something else happen. So do we really have to spend time on this?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. And there are also other weird elements of this to me, like Dr. Wheelo is trying to find the world's strongest body to inhabit, right? And so they kind of pull in Master Roshi. Well, guess whose body they had before Master Roshi?
Hey, well, hold on. Maybe Wheelo doesn't want to be a weird like green thing, right? Like
that's
He's moving
That's the
from a
only thing
brain
that
to
you can.
whatever he wants. He's I don't want just performance. I want looks in my vehicle.
Right, yeah. And that's the only thing that you can kind of justify this with. But Piccolo is significantly stronger than Master Roshi at this point. Um, so, yeah, I mean, the only thing you can assume is that he doesn't want to be a green alien looking guy.
That is
Um,
pretty funny. And I mean, there's a lot of things you could maybe just be like, maybe they didn't realize how powerful Piccolo was or something. I don't know. Like, but they also kind of seem to know who Piccolo is, and they also knew what the Dragon Balls were. So man,
They also like we kind of glossed over it, but Dr. Wheelo, when Goku is flying on the Nimbus to his lab, Dr. Wheelo's like, "Oh, I can sense his power. He's so powerful."
oh yeah, that's right. He does say that. Sorry, I'm so used to just like everyone being able to do that that I didn't even think about it. Yeah, Dr. Wheelo can like sense energy levels.
It's a little weird. I don't know if the implication is that they made some sort of like biotech that can do that, and because he's in that tech he can sense power levels. It's just
Like
strange.
he's just a brain. Like how does he do that? I mean, we know that technology can sense energy levels, like the Saiyan Scouters and stuff like that. So I mean,
Right.
that's not unheard of, but there's just no explanation for it.
Right. It just feels weird. Like they almost treat him like he is another fighter in some ways. But regardless, this kind of turns into the fight between Piccolo and Goku. Um, Gohan keeps basically trying to talk to Piccolo and is like, Mr. Piccolo, what are you doing? Like, it's me, Gohan. And Piccolo, on multiple occasions, attacks Gohan. There's actually two sequences that I thought were I just really enjoyed the visual aspect of it, where Piccolo like goes to deck Gohan in the face, and Goku just like low block like catches Piccolo's fist right in front of Gohan's face. And then there's another one where Piccolo's using a ki blast where he's going to blast Gohan, and Goku like flies over to the side and like redirects the ki blast with his own energy. They both are like really cool saves visually.
Now, I couldn't tell if it was the way they animated it or if it was supposed to be this way, but when Piccolo's getting ready to hit Gohan with the ki blast, does he hesitate a little bit or is it just the way they animated? Did you notice anything there?
There is kind of like a long pause or delay. You know what? I didn't necessarily read it as intentional, but like as an intentional hesitation on Piccolo's part, but it could have been what they were trying to convey. I kind of just read it as like um just like he was slow to charge the ki blast or something, but maybe that's what they were trying to convey.
I mean, honestly, if they were trying to convey that there's some sort of hesitation, then, I think they did a good job if I'm questioning it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm very torn on this fight because I actually have the same notes that you just brought up that I like Goku's catching or Piccolo's punch, and I like Goku deflecting Piccolo's ki blast to protect his son. But outside of that, there is not a whole lot to speak of between the Goku Piccolo fight. It's sort of a background fight, but at the same time, it's also like the main thing that's happening at this point. It's a very weird scene. And while this is happening, like, Gohan's trying to, help his mentor and dad stop fighting. And he's getting pissed and he's beginning to like erupt with anger. And Dr. Kochin's like laughing at Gohan and even kind of provoking him. But Dr. Wheeler was like, hey, please don't do that. Don't provoke that kid. And Cochran's just like egotistical and not even caring, even launches like a ki blast towards Gohan.
I'm gonna provoke that kid.
That's the mistake everyone makes.
Yeah. He basically has like this staff that he like pops open the head almost like a laser gun and fires off a ki blast with it, which is a cool effect for like a mad scientist. And this, with Gohan in kind of like his rage moment, he's already like shooting out this aura from him that's like making the lab shake. And so Gohan full on like takes the blast and protects himself with his own ki energy, and even goes so far as to kind of like start to break the lab as he like screams. You can see Dr. Wheelo's like the container that he's in and the surrounding area start to break, and Gohan kind of like it's one of his rage bursts where he basically like sends out this energy wave, and then that's it. That's kind of like he's spent himself, and then he's kind of like falling on the floor again.
And like Krillin kind of follows this up by demanding that Cochrane release Bulma, that he let her out of her electrical cage. But Cochrane's not too keen on that and responds by turning his arm into a machine gun. And this is where we get another iconic scene where Krillin begins running away from this machine gun, like while running away as the bullets are exploding behind him. This is also in the series opening.
I mean, I like this sequence. I like that. I mean, Dr. Cochin is interesting to me in terms of like just his actions, but I also just like that we still have guns that are somewhat relevant. I mean, this is clearly like a souped up gun. It's like exploding the walls.
Yep.
But I like that Krillin, basically has to run away from it. This is neat. We also kind of get an understanding now that Dr. Cochin he's not purely organic. There's at least parts of him that are they're mechanical. It's hard to say how much at this point. But I think we're going to find out here pretty quickly.
Yes. We do see that Roshi arrives back on scene and actually disarms Cochrane. And during all the hustle and bustle of all this fighting and explosions, Piccolo's mind control, whatever, wears off. And we also learn that Dr. Wheelo's brain jar is also attached to a mech. So there's a lot happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Cochin is literally disarmed as Roshi like chops through his gun arm. I think we kind of saw the like metal veins or whatever on Piccolo's head. I think they cracked at one point when Gohan was like screaming. And so between that and the damage that the lab itself has taken, it seems like that has kind of caused Piccolo's brain controlled device to falter. At this point, we kind of have one of my favorite things in Dragon Ball Z, which is we've got this host of good guys between Piccolo, Goku, Gohan, Krillin, and Master Roshi, and they're all lined up to fight against the big bad, which is Dr. Wheelo in a kaiju-sized mech.
I do want to touch on, there's a moment where everything's kind of falling apart and Wheelo's coming out in his giant mech, where part of the stage that they're on collapses, and we see Cochrane actually falls down this hole that's created, and we see him kind of like falling alongside this like giant energy beam that's a part of their evil lair, and arcs of energy are arcing off of it and connecting with Cochrane, and we see like his skin is actually like burnt away as he's falling, and it reveals like his like inner like robot skeleton, and as he's falling we see him like pleading and screaming for Wheelo's help before eventually the energy arcs out and consumes him and causes him to explode. It's like a really gruesome scene out of nowhere.
Yeah, it also leaves a lot of questions. Like, was Cochin... I mean, did they take Cochin's brain and put it in a robot? Was Cochin just a robot based off of, like, elements of the original Dr. Cochin? I don't know what to think here, but one way or another, this version of Cochin is fully a robot. It's not like a cyborg or anything like that, or an android. I always get those mixed up because
I don't know the rule. I don't think Dragon Ball has hard rules for that stuff.
Yeah, Dragon Ball I think also calls them the wrong names, but
yes,
either way.
If you want my explanation, it's cyborg is something that's part like bio, part technological, and then an android would be a robot made in the likeness of something biological.
I think that is the correct definitions, and I think that they, like androids 17 and 18 in particular, should be cyborg 17 and 18, which is a long running. Yeah, I mean that's a long running Team 4-Star joke too, but Oh
Anyway,
well.
we're at the big boss battle, and all the heroes line up, and Piccolo's not waiting for the Team Go sign as he just charges in on his own for revenge for being like mind controlled and made a fool of. And what immediately happens is he's tossed to the side and is made a fool of.
Yeah. I mean, at least it wasn't Krillin this time. At least not yet.
Not yet.
And the our other host, or the remaining host of good guys, all line up to fire off a simultaneous Kamehameha, which I mean, this is, to me, is just kind of like fanfare. Like, it's not poorly animated, but it's not like incredibly animated either. It's just fun to see all of them line up and blast off a Kamehameha.
Yeah, it's so they all line up, they fire. You get like this cool like hero moment. The pacing of this movie's kind of quick, so the hero moment's not very long, and the team Kamehameha wave doesn't even scratch Wilow's armor. Um, and as he pushes through the Kamehameha wave, we have something really weird that happens, which is Gohan launches forward with the power pole. Which how do we see that very often? Is that something that Gohan does?
Like Gohan fighting with the power pole.
Yeah, like I know he had like the sword when he was training with Piccolo. I just don't remember much power pole.
Gosh, I'm trying to think of another time that he uses the power pole, and I'm pretty sure it is non existent.
Okay, all right. Well, that explains why that looks so weird in my head because, like, I get the imagery of like Goku with the power pole, right? Like that's a key part of that character's progression. But like Gohan went a different route. So why does he have the power pole?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, funny thing is, I didn't even question it just because Goku has the power pole, and it's kind of like, well, Goku almost never uses it anymore. So, I mean, I guess it's just lying around. Gohan could have just grabbed it, but yeah, I think this might be the singular moment that we see Gohan with the power pole.
That's pretty funny. It just really caught me off guard. Well, thankfully, Gohan doesn't do much with it and is in fact like knocked out before he can even swing it. And so Goku is forced to catch his unconscious son and the power pole. So now it's back to him.
Yeah, I do just want to bring up, because there's going to be multiple repeating moments of this. Krillin basically gets one shot taken out by a key blast and just kind of like tossed to the side. Um, Krillin has yet to do anything useful in this movie.
Hey, hold on. He jumped out and knocked somebody aside who was going to hit Gohan earlier. That's neat. He was there for that.
There you go. That's true. And I'm on Team Krillin, man, but these movies don't treat him well.
No. Yeah, so Goku's forced to step up. He actually trips Wilow's robot up with the power pole. And I thought it looked kind of cool where he trips the robot, then Piccolo leaps into the air, and we see him like raining down key blasts that just fully envelop Wilow's robotic body. This combo doesn't do anything as the robot gets up and just bashes Piccolo around, but it's kind of cool looking.
It is cool. I like the sequence quite a bit. It kind of gives like a Star Wars vibe of like tripping in AT-AT or something like that. But yeah, Piccolo kind of gets chumped, getting thrown into the ceiling of the lab. Goku's like, well, guess I got to try again, and goes into, I think he just launches immediately into a Kaioken times 3, and then starts like flinging himself, like kicks and punches at the mech, and does manage to actually like punch through its arm, knocking its arm clean off, and then fires off a Kamehameha, where we get the mech now firing off a key blast from its chest mouth thing, and we get a full-on beam struggle as Goku powers up into, I think, what's supposed to be like Kaioken times 4 to fully engulf the mech in his increased power Kamehameha.
Yeah, and that Kaioken times three is actually also in the series opening animation. Want to point that out. There's a ton from this movie. Um, yeah, and this massive Kamehameha wave, it's actually kind of cool. At least by this movie standards. It blasts through the mech and like it blasts like the entire side of the evil building out. Kind of blowing everything off into the air. And Wheelo is knocked up into low orbit, where he decides that if he can't beat Goku, he might as well just blow up the Earth.
This this has some Frieza vibes to it here,
Doesn't
but
it?
I mean this movie, at least from the anime's perspective, did come out quite a bit before Frieza. I imagine Frieza was already out in the manga at the time, but this is interesting. Goku is kind of like telling everybody to get out of here, and he starts charging a spirit bomb. He starts absorbing energy from the planet, and I actually like how this goes because before Goku can launch off his spirit bomb, he full on gets like airstrike key blasted by the mech and gets like basically like beat up and hurt by the key blast before he can even throw out the spirit bomb.
Yeah. This was kind of surprising for me. For a moment, I thought this was the blast that was going to blow up the planet. And I was just like, oh shoot! Like he just just took them all out. But no, this was not taking out the planet. This was just like taking out Goku and then like I guess a couple other random spots that he thought looked like jerks. But
Take that, Mountain.
yeah, it's kind of the surprise strike, which I like. And then the part that really caught me off guard here is that his plan to destroy the Earth was to reenact the extinction of the dinosaurs, I guess. He was just going to turn into a meteor and fly into the planet.
it's interesting, right? Because I mean, I don't know if that was going to be like the end result of his plan, but this turns into like I again I like this part because Goku's down and out for the moment anyway, and so the other heroes have to kind of jump into the fray as Piccolo, Gohan, and Krillin launch themselves almost like out into space to try to intercept this mech meteor.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of this neat hero moment where Gohan gets in a neat blow and Piccolo, shoots a neat key blast from his mouth. And then Krillin gets punched in the face while exclaiming, "Can I at least get in one good blow?"
Like, I love Krillin. I like to see Krillin do cool stuff. The movies, I think, as like a deliberate running gag, treat Krillin as the butt of the joke and just he literally almost like a Deadpool fourth wall break is like, what? Why can't I get one good hit in?
I mean, I was okay with it here because I was thinking the exact same thing. So it's like, come on, can't my boy get something? And this had to have been a dubism, right? Like this had to have been them being like, come on, like, can't the boy get something?
I'm not sure. You know what? I'd have to go look and see. I think that they keep that running gag in the Japanese, though. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, my boy. No.
I know. I'm pretty sure they do. I think it's deliberate. So it's like on one hand, it's funny, but on the other hand, I'm like, disrespecting Krillin like that, man.
Anyway, I will hear no more of this. Wheelo decides to launch a planet annihilating blast, and Goku gets back up and just throws a spirit bomb back at it, and it just collides with it, powers through it, and then impacts the Mad Doctor, who screams, "Damn you, Goku!" before exploding.
I actually like the visual here because the beam that Dr. Wheelo shoots is like this massive red beam, and you see just the little spirit bomb ball that's like shooting up into that big red beam and like penetrates through it and past it and then blasts and hits Dr. Wheelo. So it's got a cool visual effect to it.
Yeah, I mean it's fun enough. And I mean, that pretty much about brings the movie to an end. Like, there's only like a minute after this where the evil layer explodes. Goku is really tired and kind of hurt, and the day is saved, and everyone laughs at Master Roshi.
That's pretty much roll credits at that point. There's really not much else going on here.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, that concludes all the material. What was your overall take on rewatching this after probably years, I would guess?
yeah, as I said, I more recently, probably within the past year, I've watched the Team 4-star abridged version of this movie, but it's such a wildly different take on it. Um it was interesting to watch this again in kind of like its somewhat original format. It very interesting to see it in the Funimation dub versus what I originally saw as the Ocean dub. It's you can tell that it's an older dub too because Goku is still calling the Kaioken the Kaioken.
Oh, yeah, I caught that. That hurt.
Yeah. Um I still
My
as far as
fucking name is in it.
King Kaioken. I still like this movie as far as the Dragon Ball movies go. I think that one of the things that we talked about for the Dead Zone movie is that it has a lot of parallels to the narrative going on in the main show. So like the Dead Zone shares a lot of parallels with the Raditz story, which is going on basically at the same time as the release of that movie. This movie, though, doesn't share a lot of parallels with the Dragon Ball story, especially from like the point at which this movie is released. I think you can kind of point to things like Dr. Wheelo has some similarities to say Dr. Gero later. I mean, you know, his brain in a jar and trying to gain power and take over the world, whatever. But that comes a lot later in the narrative, so it's kind of hard to say which influenced the other. And I think the fighting is fun. It's much more grounded in terms of martial arts. It is, like you said, Dayton, the sequences are pretty brief, but I still enjoy the ones that we do get out of it. Yeah, that's most of it. I think that it's a fun little narrative, and the fighting is pretty fun. So what did you think? Because I think this is your first time seeing it, is that right?
Yeah. This is my first time seeing it. I'm torn on the inside because part of me looks at it and goes, all right, if I judge this as just like a movie, I don't think I can give it a fair rating because then I have to compare it to all the other movies we've seen, right? And like I have to compare it to like Path to Power and things like that. And you can tell it doesn't have the same budget. And you can tell it also has to fit like a time slot. And so there are some cuts they have to make, and there's some ways they have to tell the story and speed things up that are kind of forced into there. And I do think it pulls away from the enjoyment. But if I judge it with the idea that, like, all right, let's go back, let's pretend I'm 13 again, and I'm seeing this on TV in like a time slot, like, it's 8 o'clock at night, and like I don't care, all my homework's done. I'm watching this, and this is what I've been waiting for all day. This is kind of awesome. Like, this is actually really entertaining. I think 13-year-old me would have been just over the moon watching something like this. Does the story make sense? Not really. Like, honestly, if you give it any level of scrutiny, it falls apart. But like, as far as the entertainment factor goes for something that you would see running on TV in like a series slot in the afternoon, like this is the movie that's coming out that month and you've been waiting for it, I think I would have given it a pass. When I was younger, I would have been entertained the entire time. Is it one of my favorite movies, or actually even like specials, I think is what you were calling them? I don't even think this one's like my favorite special, but it is pretty decent. And I will say I was entertained and there were some good points. So I give it a passing grade. I will say, why is this called the world's strongest?
I mean, the only thing is the idea that Dr. Wheelo is trying to find the world's strongest fighter so that he can take over their body and then take over the world. That's like the narrative point for that title.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the history of Trunks is probably like my favorite like movie special that they've done. Just because it's entertaining. It also like that one hits me like in emotional spots too that like Dragon Ball very, very rarely hits for me. So I know they can do a good job with these. I know they can do better than what this one is, even though the history of Trunks is, further along in the timeline. They've probably gotten better. But at the same time, I was entertained the entire time. There's plenty of fighting. There's interesting stuff happening on the screen. I give this a passing grade. I don't give it the highest marks, but I was entertained for that entire hour, and that's about all I can ask for.
Yeah, I imagine that I probably give these, especially some of these earlier Dragon Ball movies, a lot more leeway. Given that one, I've seen them, two, I understand not only the time frame that they came out in, which is gosh, almost 30 years ago at this point, but also that they are, like you said, it's not even really a movie. It is more like a TV special. So it doesn't have, like you said, Dayton, it doesn't have the budget, the care, or even the time allowance that a movie like Battle of Gods would have even. So I think I am probably giving it quite a bit of leeway, but I think the two biggest points that I kind of already expressed was that it has, while the narrative is not excellent, it's at least unique, and it still kind of keeps that fighting grounded in martial arts and has some fun choreography in it.
Yeah. And so like I just throw all the narrative out the window because you can't make sense of it. Like, why are there Cybermen? Like, when does this take place? Like, what is going on? Why does Gohan have the power pole? Like, that stuff's not important, especially because when I look at this, I'm like, you know what? If I just say it's not canon and just turn my brain down a little bit, like I'm having a good time and I'm entertained. And that's all I really want out of like a TV special from decades ago at this point.
Yeah, that's basically what you had to do. That's part of me giving it some allowances here too. I still think it's a fun watch, and it was fun getting to see it now dubbed by Funimation with with Sean Schemmel as Goku and stuff. You can tell it's definitely an older dub, but it's fine in that, right? I'm curious to keep kind of like moving through the movies and see, or the TV specials, and see how they compare in your mind, because I think the first three, this is number 2, I think the first 3 are pretty solid. And then there's a couple more that are solid in there, but there are some that I'm like, there are a few that are standout and exceptionally good, and there are a few that are standout and exceptionally bad.
Yeah, so far we've only seen 2. The Dead Zone was fine. This one was I don't know. This one I would say is comparable to Dead Zone. I think they're both fairly entertaining. Nothing to write home about, but also nothing too egregious. Like, I enjoyed Dead Zone and I enjoyed this one. They're fine TV specials. I would have been entertained with both of them when I was like 13 watching, everything on Toonami or whatever.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't think I have a whole lot more to say about it. Did you have anything else you wanted to discuss about this one, Dayton?
No, other than Krillin needs to stop being done dirty, damn it. So they'd lose some points right there.
Man, I don't think that's going to change if my memory serves me.
Hey, I've seen Super. It never changes, man.
God, poor Krillin. One day.
I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. All right, that's going to be it for this episode of Instant Transmission, where we discuss everything Dragon Ball. This has been your host, Todd.
And Dayton.
Don't forget, we're on Patreon and Twitter. If you want to give us your body for science, you can find us at patreon.com/ITDBpodcast and over on Twitter at x.com/ITDBpodcast. Please like, review, subscribe, all of those fun things on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. Thank you all so much for your support. Be sure to join us next time as we present our top 3 fights in all of Dragon Ball. There's only one caveat. No Goku.
Man, we are rustling some jimmies lately, aren't we?
That's right. Dragon Ball has pushed the Goku button a few too many times, so we have dropped him out of the running for our favorite fights this go-around. Will the Prince of All Saiyans finally be able to snag a win without Goku in the picture? Perhaps Gohan will have his time to shine? Or will they both get slapped down by Beerus beating Oolong in a match of rock, paper, scissors? Find out next time. And to all our fellow Dragon Ball fans, stay safe out there, and remember to keep rocking the dragon.
I really wanted to call this the world's most okayest movie I've seen, but I couldn't find a spot to say that joke.
I love it.